What's going on, everybody? This is Afro Think Tank. You know how I'm always talking about how European Americans are right now at a reflection point in their existence where they have to make a decision on what it is to be white, what it is to be European American, what is it to be American, and also what it is to be human, right? And just like other points in history, society that once was overwhelmingly dominant, once their era or their reign is coming to an end, right? Once that mechanism starts, and they have to start reflecting on who they are without all of this power, you know, or who they are when defined around other people that have their own identities, you know, and cultures. You know, you have to start, you know, thinking about how am I going to actually interact with these people? What if I want to advance, or if I want to have a peaceful life for my children, and if I want to still succeed, and if I still want to, you know, evolve and just keep going, you know, at a decent pace, how do I go about doing that? You know, in a society where there's so many competing different ideologies, thought processes, different looking people, you know, we're talking about competition, jealousy, you know, advantages and things like that. And there's this guy on YouTube, you know, I swear this guy, he made one video, white guy, he made a video, and I think he perfectly captured the conversation European Americans are having amongst themselves about, you know, how it is they need to be and are and have been interacting with the Africans who live in America, the African Americans, you know, any other person that would be considered black, right? And they're having it's a serious conversation that they never had to have with each other, right? Like they literally have no choice but to have this conversation right now, right? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to attach this link. I'm going to attach this video so you can check it out and just see, hey, there is a conversation being had, you know, whether it's being had, you know, in front of us or not. Most of it's probably being had behind closed doors, behind their closed doors amongst themselves, because truthfully and honestly, these type of conversations are ones they got to have, because a lot of the problems we have in the Western world can't be fixed by us Africans, right? It has to be fixed internally through them and their culture. Right? We can't make them change. We can't make them view the world any differently. They have to be the ones to fight against the things within their culture that makes them undesirable. They have to figure out what it is to be human. You know, they have to figure out how they want to be defined as a group of people going forward, you know, and they have to accept how they've been defined, you know, in the past, and just come to a reckoning about all of that and then move forward. But they have to figure out how to do that, you know, in a healthy way, because a lot of them are not doing that in a healthy way. A lot of them can't handle the truth. A lot of them can't process this information. A lot of them can't accept what it is that their forefathers did. A lot of them can't accept the advantages that they have. A lot of them cannot accept that the cushion that they lay upon was built, you know, by the misdeeds of their ancestors, and that their comfortability in life, for some of them, is due to the fact that somebody had to get something taken from them, or somebody had to be tortured, killed, so that they can have these things that they have. They don't understand the institution in which they live in. Even the ones that suffer, they don't understand, because they suffer, they think it's all equal, but they don't even understand, some of them, that they suffer in the institution that was created for them, right? You know, not created for them, yet they still suffer under that system, which makes them think, damn, well, is this system really for me? You know what I'm saying? But anyway, without further ado, I'm gonna let y'all listen to this clip right here. I think it says it all. It's pretty well thought out. It represents a lot of the conversations that's being had in their communities, and some of them are having it out in the open finally, so that we can all participate. Anyway, that's all I got to say. It's Afro Think Tank. Learn something, teach something. I'm out.
God, all white people are racist. That statement is racist. White people can't be victims of racism. Any discrimination based on skin color is racism. No, racism only exists when discrimination carries the power to oppress. And since white people have all the power, they can't be oppressed. And if they can't be oppressed, then they can't be victims of racism. You're just changing the definition of racism to justify discrimination. And even by your definition, a vulnerable white person can still suffer racism from a powerful black person. Race was created by white people so that Europeans could justify the maintenance of the Atlantic trade route, which sustained whole industries upon the stolen and resources and labor of indigenous people in the Americas and Africa. Africans sold their own people into slavery, not because of race, but even freed slaves went on to own slaves. That's just internalized racism. But why are we still talking about this? Didn't the civil rights movement rectify racism? It's not rectified until black people get the reparations they deserve. White people shouldn't be punished for the deeds of their ancestors. Black people are being punished for the deeds of white people's ancestors. Most white people are not descendants of slave owners. Yeah, but they still benefit from the economic prosperity that slavery brought to this country. So do black people. If you go back far enough, all of us are descendants of tragedy and horror. Are you all lives mattering me right now? I just don't think that white children should grow up feeling guilty because they're born white. And black children shouldn't be made to feel lazy, dumb, dirty, or violent simply because they're black. Agreed. People should just treat each other equally regardless of race. We tried that, but equal treatment of all races produces unequal outcomes in a racist society. Race-neutral policies have left black people with worse health outcomes, underfunded schools, and mass incarceration. All of those racial inequalities are the trickle-down effect of past racism. But those effects are reinforcing themselves because our institutions are still systemically racist. Things like affirmative action would allow more black students to get into universities. Why can't their merit get them in the universities on their own? Because university admissions are biased towards students that have white values, white educational standards, and white perspectives. Education is education. There is no racial bias in math or science. Of course there is. The search for objective truth is an enlightenment value that privileges truth to the majority perspective. But that's a democracy. Do you know how hard it is for poor black families to escape poverty when their schools are underfunded, medical workers are unfamiliar with black bodies, and predatory lending leaves them drowning in debt? But isn't it possible that black culture's tendency to view their suffering through the lens of racism might be holding black people back? The worst parts of black culture are a product of racism. Rap music might be leading to increased violence. Rap is just a healthy expression of young people's pain and anger. Okay, but soul food isn't the healthiest food in the world. It only became unhealthy because slaves couldn't find or afford the ingredients to the original African recipes. But despite comparable economic conditions, black people on average buy more luxury items like cars and jewelry. Black people don't have the privilege of being respected on sight, and so they buy valuable things to be treated as valuable. But that sounds like class discrimination, not race. They're synonymous in America. Most black people are middle class. And yet that's not what you see in the news. Black crime is all you hear about. And don't even get us started on the over-policing of black neighborhoods. They aren't over-policed, they're under-policed. What? Crime is higher in densely populated cities. Black people are higher in population in those cities. Higher crime in smaller areas means that officers are spread thin, therefore less efficient and more aggressive policing ensues. Plus, black people do commit more racial crimes than white people. No, most black people just live closer to white neighborhoods than white people live close to black neighborhoods. But that doesn't explain why black people commit most of the murders in this country. That's just because white neighborhoods are less policed, so white people are more likely to get away with murder. But black communities are benefiting the most from mass incarceration. Crime rates are dropping. Explain to me how stealing fathers from the home benefits families when having a two-parent home is one of the biggest predictors of health and wealth outcomes in children. Criminals don't make good fathers. Some kids are better off in a one-parent household than a house full of gangbanging and drug dealing. The prison system is creating these criminals by releasing them with more psychological damage than they went in with. That is if they aren't killed before they're arrested. If it wasn't for social media, police officers wouldn't even be held accountable for their brutality. But it's also social media that fed us the rage that led to riots and looting during the BLM protests. Or they just wanted a reason to go outside. They were fighting for justice. But then the whole anti-racist movement created a cult of white zombies that hated themselves for doing nothing wrong. Ooh, your white fragility is showing. I'm only half white. You're white passing. You don't know me or what I've been through. You might be oppressed, but you aren't oppressed for the color of your skin. Defining me by what I haven't suffered tells you nothing about who I am or what my life is like. Plus, racial diversity quotas have made being white a huge disadvantage to employment, dating, and admissions. No, it just created opportunities for minorities that were once marginalized. And we're only forcing representation until we can remove the obstacles that are keeping diversity from happening naturally. But if we're competing for the same number of jobs based on race, white people as the majority population have a far larger pool of people to compete with. Oh my god, why do white people insist on pretending to be oppressed? Because the only alternative given to them is to be racist. Intersectionality has created the oppression Olympics, causing everyone to clamor for any minority status that might move them up the rungs of victimhood. And critical race theory embraces the Marxist idea that if you're not oppressed, you're automatically an oppressor. And they want to teach this to our children. It's the truth. Your wealth is always at the expense of the poor. Do we really want to be teaching kids that a happy, healthy life is reserved for those who have power over others? Better than black kids being confused about why life is so much harder for them than their white counterparts. Why do you think black people think bleaching their skin will make them more desirable? I don't know. White people tan their skin to appear more desirable. That's different. Black people straighten their hair to assimilate into the white workplace, while white girls get butt implants to appropriate black culture. It's not always appropriation. Sometimes it's appreciation. Celebrities using black hairstyles, slangs, trends, and fashion aren't adopting the culture. They're siphoning the attention that should be going to black people. They're also bringing more eyes, money, and power to the culture at the same time. That's how cultures grow. No, that's how they get erased. Integration is cultural genocide for minorities. Culture is supposed to change. It's an evolving toolkit of best practices. That's a colonizer's view of culture. Culture is the memory of our ancestors and the wisdom they passed down to us. Then why, as Americans with cultural influences from around the world, do we keep referring to our culture as whiteness or blackness? Because being black in America is a unique experience. experience. Every black person in America knows what it feels like to be discriminated against. But the assumption that all black people think, feel, and act the same is the same logic that led to racism in the first place. You don't know what it's like growing up without role models in power that look like you. If the only depiction of your race in films is servants and gangsters, you start to assume that's all you're capable of being. What era do you live in? Black people are represented in films as heroes, scholars, presidents, and scientists. Why does it even matter? No one struggles to relate to leads that dress differently or have different hair color from them. We need white people to see power and beauty associated with minorities. It's not just to feel pride in ourselves, it's for other people to understand our perspectives. Sure, but voicing an animated character that's not your race is being treated as if it's blackface. We can discuss that after they take down all the statues of Confederate slave owners. But we can't judge history based on modern ethical standards. But we don't need to glorify them either. I'm pretty sure cancel culture already skewered anyone with racist intent. Overt racism might be dying, but covertly, people still discriminate based on race. Every group of people tends to prefer and feel safe with people similar to them. That implicit bias is still racism. There's only so much microaggression a black person can take. I think you're both mistaking genuine confusion and curiosity for aggression. Most white people only act awkwardly in front of black people because they're scared of saying or doing something that can be seen as offensive. Treating black people like idiots, accusing them of stealing, and belittling service industry workers is not an accident. Nobody's approving of Karen behavior. I was just talking about hair touching and unnecessary compliments. It's gonna take way too much emotional labor to explain this to you. But I want to understand. Don't I deserve that? What are we going to do about it? America is a cultural melting pot, a social experiment that's pushing the limits of humans' capacity to collaborate and empathize with people unlike them. I'd like to think that we still have a chance at proving to the world that human beings can rise above their tribalistic impulses. But both sides of the racial debate aren't even fighting for a just and equal society anymore. We're all just fighting for the right to see ourselves as good people. Racism is alive and thriving, but it's hiding in our disgust for ourselves and our willingness to hurt each other to signal our virtue, to be empathized with, to feel like we belong. All we do is shuck responsibility back and forth by throwing statistics at each other. But there's no amount of data that's going to teach us how to see ourselves in others. Only by working together towards a shared goal, by co-creating culture, businesses, relationships, and art, will we be able to expand our in-group, perhaps one day to the entirety of humanity. Only then will we see clearly that the only obstacle that ever stood between us and the best version of our species was the illusion that we're somehow separate from each other.